Well, welcome to the June 24th, 2024 regular meeting of the Town of Abingdon Planning Commission. We appreciate your interest and encourage public participation in our meeting. Your comments are important to our decision-making process. Please note that there will be two opportunities during the meeting for you to address the commission members. The first will come at the beginning of the agenda when we ask for public comment for items not on the agenda. The second opportunity will come if there is a public hearing on the agenda when the chairman declares the meeting open for comment. Anyone commenting to the commission should give their full name, their address, and should limit their talk to 3 minutes. Roll call.
Mr. Austin, Mr. Johnson,
Present.
Mr. Weaver,
Present.
Mr. Pennington,
Present.
Mr. Sproles, Mr. Wilson,
Present.
and Mr. Schuman.
Present. Next order of business is public comment for items not on the agenda. Is anybody signed
There
up for
wasn't
that?
anybody, no.
Anybody? Okay. Move on to the first certificate of appropriateness. Front Row Music, P.O. Box 524, Abingdon, Virginia 24212. Applicant.
We gotta do approval of minutes.
Oh, I'm
Approval of
sorry.
minutes.
Thank you. Yeah, approval of the minutes from the special meeting, June 10th, 2024. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes? If not, is there a motion to accept the minutes as presented? Is
So moved.
there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Abstain,
Okay.
in that I wasn't here.
All righty. Now we move on to the first certificate of appropriateness. Front Row Music, P.O. Box 524, Abingdon, Virginia 24212. Applicant Chessie Cornett, 422 West Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia. Owner, certificate of appropriateness for wall signage and exterior changes located at 422 West Main Street, parentheses, parcel 019-1-27, in parentheses. Staff report.
Cale Conklin, Planner 1 with the town. So the applicant, Front Row Music, and the owner, Chessie Cornett, has requested approval of a certificate of appropriateness to allow 2 unapproved wall signs on the west elevation and east elevation of the CMU building, and to allow a different paint scheme now applied to the CMU building's exterior. It's located at 422 West Main Street. A little background, 422 West Main Street is occupied by Front Row Music. There was 1 wall sign placed on the east elevation and 1 wall sign placed on the west elevation. Before the installation of the 2 unapproved wall signs, there's an existing projecting sign and window signage on the primary elevation. The applicant requests the allowance of 2 unapproved wall signs that replace 2 previous wall signs located on the east and west elevations of the building. Each sign will be made of polycomposite material and measure 4 feet by 8 feet for a total of 32 square feet for each sign. The color of the signs will have a black background, white and orange lettering, and a white logo as seen in the photos provided below. The unapproved wall signs match the previous wall sign size and location. Only the color and design has been changed. The existing projecting sign and window sign will be unchanged. And then the exterior CMU building walls were painted different shades of brown, and then now it is different shades of gray. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Conklin?
The actual calculation of the permitted area versus the requested area, do you have that?
It's gonna match, like, it's gonna be 1 square foot for every 1 linear foot of the building wall. I don't have the dimensions of how long that side of the building is, but it's gonna be way longer than 32 feet, so that does match within the limits.
Okay, that's what I was getting at.
Yep.
Any more questions?
So if we were looking at it from a point of, hey, we're looking to approve this, it's within what would generally be approved. It's just simply replacing what was already
Yeah.
there
Yep.
beforehand.
Yep.
Okay. Any additional questions? Does the applicant want to say anything? Are they present? If they, all right. Any comment from the public? What is the pleasure of the commission? Any additional questions, concerns? If not, is there a motion?
I make a motion the COA be approved as submitted.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any additional discussion? If not, call the roll.
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Sproles? Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye.
Yes,
All right.
that's it, Mr. Johnson.
COA is approved. Number 2, Taylor Lindsay, 195 Stonewall Heights Avenue, Virginia, 24210, owner, certificate of appropriateness for new rear entrance located at 301 West Main Street, parentheses, parcel 011-1-80, in parentheses. Staff report.
Okay, so this evening you were looking at a certificate of appropriateness to create a new entrance on the west elevation towards the rear of the building to install 2 wooden doors. This is located at 301 West Main Street. You can see here in the diagram that was provided to us, this is the approximate position of the door. I know we have looked at this building frequently over the last couple of years. This was a building that is in the Places in Time Volume 2 by Nancy C. King. It was built in 1908 by Citizens Bank and Trust. In 1928, an addition was made to the west side of the structure, and the front window and door arrangements were modified. One of the things that we want to bring out in the staff findings is that we have talked a lot about the mural portion of the building and the front of the building. And so as you all remember, we had a different applicant who came in and they were going to try to kind of dramatically change the way that this whole entire structure was reviewed, and you all were not in favor of that. We put the Sanborn maps in here so that you can see some of the way that this building has changed over time. The applicant, the reason that they're asking for this is that there's actually a divided tenant space. So the front half of the building will have tenants, the back half of the building will have tenants. So now you've created the need for an additional exit from that structure for fire safety. And the rear addition obviously had to have been put on past 1928 because you can see in these Sanborn maps it doesn't show up in any of them. The applicant is intending, if you do make this recommendation for approval, to reuse 2 wooden doors that were found in the building for the entrances. And so that is in keeping with the historic nature of that structure. In terms of hardware, the only change discussed when speaking with the applicant was an addition of a deadbolt mechanism. The existing wooden doors already have an area for that. And so they would just be adding that to those doors. So one of the pieces to this equation that's really important for you all to look at is the fact that if this is approved and this does go in front of the or in front of the town council, the applicant will have to request an easement because this adjoins right next to the park. And so I talked to Rick about this project, and he indicated that he would need at least a 4-foot wide easement that is unblocked essentially so that the door could open, people could come out, and then go to the sidewalk. So that is what Rick indicated. So if you all tonight recommend a certificate of appropriateness to actually add a door, the applicant will have to go to the town council and submit a request for a permanent easement. We have seen this in the past. We've had a couple of them actually in the last year, but one that was probably the one that you all looked at again, which was kind of a chicken and the egg thing, was on the Summers building. So we had the steps that came out of the Summers building onto the sidewalk. What they first had was just like a little alcove, and then they had to make, the steps with the railings in order to have a fire escape there. And so they went through the same process. We first went through a design COA process with them. Actually, that was with HPRB. And then they made the request for an easement over the sidewalk. The second one that we dealt with in this last year, where we went to town council for an easement over public property, was actually for the new Ace Hardware. So where their driveway was coming out, you all approved the site plan and the shape of the building and all the signage, and they needed an easement across the town's park there, right in front of the sign to the meadows. So if you all do recommend approval of the door, this isn't their last step. They would still have to go to town council to get that easement. So it is a two-step process. And so tonight, you are specifically looking at a certificate of appropriateness for that door. This drawing is a little bit rudimentary, so the applicant is here if you would like to speak with him and ask him more questions about the interior space of the building and why this door is needed.
Questions for Ms. Rice?
Yeah, I think you clarified this for me, but that paved area there is not owned by the applicant.
That is correct. That is owned by the town as Humphreys Park, and so they would need to ask for an easement from town council.
And what will be the use of that area?
So for a long time, this has been underutilized. One of the things that our town manager has discussed with staff is actually making this more of a usable space. I think you know that he has passion for making the community better and more user-friendly, so we've talked a lot about putting in picnic tables and making this more of a community space. The applicant also has indicated that when this building is open and he has tenants that they also would like to have a more integrated relationship with that park. So there isn't a plan now. There hasn't been for years and years, but
So just, you may not know, but the town did hire a landscape architect, and they do have concepts for that whole area. So I don't know if you've seen those or not. They were probably done roughly 10 years ago.
okay.
And I'm sure I probably got copies of them. If it might just help see the space a little bit differently. Also, I think the easement would have to be more than 4 feet because, Michael, for handicapped, you have to have at least 60-inch turning radius when you open the door, right?
I was going there. You're right.
Well, and the door, as
You have to
proposed,
have-
opens the wrong way.
The doors will have to swing outward,
Yeah.
and there will need to be 60 inches clear.
Okay,
It's got to be the other swing too, I believe.
so a
Correct.
5 foot wide.
That's why I was asking what the use of the space will be. If it's gonna be storage for some business, then you could make the argument that it's for able-bodied people. But if we don't really know what the tenant space is gonna be,
Correct. The intended space is for office, like a shared use space so you could go in and rent an office space in there. So it is, will be a public space, so to speak.
But this is for.
It's not storage.
This is for fire code purposes,
Correct.
meaning exit only, or is this
Correct.
ingress egress?
It'll just be an exit only.
Okay.
Now, if memory serves, at one time, I guess it was in front of where the mural is, there was a stage there for a period of time.
Yeah, we've
I
had a
don't
lot of
think that
people-
matters in terms of this, because
Yeah. We've had a lot of people ask, I mean, as you all know, the pickleball is a very exciting thing, and some people have asked if we could put pickleball there. I said we'd have to have it really well caged in so people weren't chasing their balls into the street. So yeah, this is, been an area that's rather underutilized, so to speak, as far as for public activity, while the park is used quite a bit. I'm sure a lot of people will be there to watch the fireworks in a week or two, so.
is the applicant here to that?
Good afternoon, Taylor Lindsay, 195 Stonewall Heights, Abington, Virginia. One comment that I had with Rick on this was not just necessarily an egress, but to make it ADA compliant. If the space downstairs were to be separated into two tenants, that eliminates the ADA compliant for wheelchair accessibility, as the current entrance and exit has really primarily been out of the front doors. The proposal for this is really to maximize the possibilities with the building. It's very challenging to have or find a tenant that really needs over, 5,000 square feet. And so if we have the ability to be able to partition that into two separate tenant spaces, this was the proposal to be able to come in and out per collaborative conversation with Rick.
I don't think, like, waiving ADA
It's not something he has
doesn't
the
happen
authority to
much,
do.
yeah.
it's federal.
So,
Yeah.
it's probably gotta be done, but my question is, it talks about 2 doors, but it only shows 1 door on the floor plan.
Yeah, my discussion was only one door, but certainly our intention is to get it compliant in a useful space. So if the specs of what was submitted need to be adjusted in order to accommodate, we're certainly open to do that. We have 2 doors available. Again, I found them in the building. I can't tell you what their original use was, but they are older, and we were gonna utilize those as the doors.
Oh, okay. It implies 2 doors are being used for this, but what it really means is you got 2 doors.
We had
at
2
least one of
options.
them.
Yeah, correct.
Okay. All right, gotcha.
Now, I need to be sure, are you saying you're not gonna make this ADA compliant because there's not a requirement?
I'm saying that this was the solution that Rick and I came up with in a collaborative conversation to continue this back space to be ADA compliant without accessibility to the front doors.
Oh, okay, because I was gonna say, if you're gonna use this for shared office space or any office space, you'd have to be ADA compliant because of the requirements for hiring and firing, so.
Correct, and that was that's where the original conversation stirred from, is that if it was currently ADA compliant, we can't take that away.
Taylor, walk me through, so you got the front 2 spaces, which we all have an idea of from the front. Opening that back, which I'm assuming cannot be accessed, you don't want them accessed through the front tenant spaces.
Yep, so currently,
Yeah. What are we talking about in that back part?
So the main building, the original structure of the building, downstairs is a dance studio, and then the only other, if we were divided into 2 tenants, the only other access point you have is coming in through the alleyway. And if you're looking at the alleyway, the town has a curb, probably to mitigate some water runoff, and there's really just very little feasibility in order to put a wheelchair accessible ramp from the alleyway. That's where we started to think, does the other side of the building? I think it's about 15 foot from that back retaining wall. It's fairly centered, but yeah, if you look here at those 2 doors in the back, it's
So that right now leads into what you're trying to get access
yeah.
on the other side.
Yeah, we're trying to maximize the utilization of space. It's, like I said, Mayana mentioned it has just been storage for, couldn't tell you for how long.
So those doors are gonna be closed? That's what the plan indicates?
Yeah, the plan would be to have those on an emergency exit only, but the ADA entrance and exit would have to be out the west side of the building.
What parking wise, are they, so right now,
Yeah, where you see
From
the
the
truck and the
street,
SUV, that
they
is.
walk, I mean, that's a fairly easy walk, but will there be, I mean, I guess that's the other side is, now would they have to walk all the way around the building?
You also have street parking there.
Okay.
Well, it's not something I think we're supposed to vote on, but I think the door ought to swing in the other direction.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, if it's ADA compliant, it's gonna have to swing out.
But instead of a left-hand reverse, it needs to be a right-hand
Right,
reverse.
Well, that certainly can be part of what the COA requires. I mean, there's no reason not to include
Otherwise,
that if you
you'd be
need
trapping them
to.
up against that retaining wall in the event of an emergency, so. If
Yeah,
the
that
door
needs to
swung
be
the other
out.
way, they could come towards the front of the building.
Well, that would tie in with any applicable easement, walking down through there
Yeah.
instead of walking around the door. I'm still in, if you partition the space into 2 spaces, then this back door is gonna be the primary access door for the back. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I said that incorrectly.
There still would be accessibility through the alleyway door. This would be the primary. I think at that point it would be tenant's choice.
I'm sorry, I thought comment made to Mike was the alleyway door was closed.
What
It
appears.
wouldn't be closed, it seemed unfeasible to get ADA compliant entrance and exit from the alleyway side, just the way that the curb is built and the undulation of the building up against it.
Yeah, the note says doors to be removed, so we'll have to alter that in our proposal, in our.
Diana, did staff have a recommendation?
We are recommending approval simply because we do not think that that addition is really part of the original building. Purely from a certificate of appropriateness perspective, for this board. Obviously, the things that you all have indicated here tonight would come into play, like these doors should remain, which you'd wanna put in your motion, but the door needs to swing the other direction, which you'd wanna put in your motion. The fact that you're saying it really actually needs to be a 60-inch, not just a 4-foot wide, easement. All of those things, I think, should be part of your recommendation.
Well, one thing it appears to me is that this question, this approval, without this door, basically that space is not usable because you couldn't safely have people back there and expect them to get out the front door if there was any kind of a fire or anything, any kind of an issue like that.
Yeah, not with two separate tenants. The only option is to have one tenant on the full downstairs.
Yeah, that's,
How wide is that building?
Excuse me?
How wide?
I was gonna guess 60, 65 feet.
Okay. Because if you have only one means of egress, it can't be deeper
I think we
than
can measure.
75 feet.
We learn how to do that.
Out the front.
Is it a right click?
That's
What you're referencing.
Somebody
says-
should
Somebody
have-
told us
If
how to
this
do
is the
that.
front,
Yeah.
It says
with that
30.
space, it can't
It
be.
says
Like
30 and
54.
27 on here. I think. Too
Well-
small to read.
Let's see.
Yeah, it says 30 on this one.
If you could somehow tie a walkway into, the town as part of the park has applicable walkways. You know, that kind of, you walk in, you've got the gazebo, and then it'll branch off to the right-hand side. Like Scott alluded to.
44.
Hmm?
Sorry.
No, like you alluded to earlier, there were plans originally. Instead of bringing, the only easement right now would be to request straight down the side of the building. You know, 5 feet, 60 inches, which then eats up all of that property to where the stage was, anything of that nature. I don't know what those other plans showed, but if you had a walkway that came into the park, I'm assuming all of that going into the park is ADA compliant, isn't it? If you
Correct.
can
It's
combine-
not-
if
it's
you
not
can
the
combine
stairs
the
in
two.
the back.
at least from the front.
At the front, correct.
Yeah. I-
It was like a natural playground that was proposed, like with big,
Yeah, like
Rocks.
chess, right? Like a chess, was that part of that one?
no, it was
there a
like,
different one?
you know, big cubes of rocks stacked up, they could
Oh,
climb
okay.
and, stuff. It was like a natural playground. It was kind of
Oh,
nice, but,
Okay. The one I
I'll
saw
look
had
tomorrow night
outdoor
for it.
games, like outdoor games, it was like
there was a
big chess
couple
piece
different
and, yeah.
ideas, but,
Yeah.
it just so y'all can see it
Mhm.
and say, hey, maybe that is something we wanna do or not. And I don't think the 5 feet, a 5-foot easement would really affect
Well,
the
and the
proposals.
thing about it is from a liability standpoint, the town is gonna wanna be named as an additional insured on that easement. Liability policies, everything of that nature, to protect them as you're coming across. It'd be closer to keep it next to the building, it'd be better to keep it close to
Yes.
the building.
Yes.
And we can also get those plans so that when he does make his request to the town council, we can at least look at the other plans that were there and have them decide whether or not an easement is appropriate. This is a two-step type of process, unless you all recommend denial tonight and then same
So
thing.
it goes from us to the town council and then back to us?
It would not come back to you, no. So what you're recommending approval or denial on is the actual physical door. Because that's the like aesthetic part. That's like, can this building be altered to have a door in that second half of it? And then town council has to approve whether or not an easement would be allowed. Truly, it's a chicken and the egg thing. However, the easement portion of this is a public hearing. Requires him to go through a lot of, advertisement, noticing all the surrounding property owners. Basically, the town is saying we are allowing somebody to use a portion of our property permanently. And so for him to go through that process first and then come to you all and you all say, no, we don't want a door in that building, doesn't, that path is more difficult for the applicant. So we would prefer to have the answer tonight, yes or no, so that he can decide. If you all say no tonight, then he's gonna have to reconfigure and rethink how he's reusing this building, so. So that's why we do it in what it looks like first, and then whether or not the easement can be at that.
Well, I like the fact that you're here now versus having built a stairwell all the way down and then say, hey, I need a door.
Well, I think the park is underutilized now. I work in the building across Plum Alley, and I cut through that park to go to the post office, and I rarely see anyone in that park. So having this business open onto it is certainly not gonna hurt you. It can only help.
So back when they were doing the concepts, got a lot of heat from business owners because they didn't want kids having to use their bathrooms. Because they're like not customers, the people were just gonna have their kids play there and then send them to use the bathrooms in all the stores. I mean, it was surprising how these people were against it, so I'll just bring that up.
Well, I mean, one of the other issues, and Mr. Lindsay may have already thought about this, is the agreement that there currently exists with the town relative to the mural.
Correct.
So,
We have had additional conversations with him, and I don't know if you care to discuss them, but he did complete the painting with a waiver. So if you've noticed, the building looks a whole lot nicer. Went with the same color, but now there's not all of this. And then the town agreed to once again do the facelift on the actual mural portion. So it does pop right now, but I think you are in agreement to keep the mural.
Yeah, at this time, we highly support that.
Is there any advantage to doing a small right-of-way instead of an easement? Like liability wise, or is it just a?
no, with the easement, it'd be a non-exclusive easement to where the town had access to it as well.
Okay.
If you did it right away, it'd more or less be dedicated.
Okay.
So the easement probably would be the better route, just make sure the town's covered, under a liability policy. Now, but this door is only gonna be utilized for ADA purposes, or is it gonna be a primary access? I'm still not clear on that.
I think it's the primary access, isn't it?
To the back half, okay.
That would be ideal, just because it's a new entrance,
Okay.
and more, I would say more accessible. May not be more accessible from the back parking lot, but from a general, if I were to have an office there, I think it would feel much nicer than coming in off the alleyway.
Well, the other thing is, if you had to have a door, let's say you come in to the front, you had to have a door to the back, that would limit what the person who rented the space in front could do. In other words, is it gonna be accessible at times when that building isn't open, or is it gonna be on a wall that they would use for something else? So it's probably not feasible to have a regular entrance from the front of the building.
Are you gonna maintain the door between the two spaces on the interior?
Yes, yeah.
But that may not be, what I'm saying is, let's say that's a shared office space, and there's a person in the front that's a retailer or a restaurant. You may want people to get to the back, and that may not be open at the same time people will be working in the back. So even there, even though there's a door, it may not be feasible for both tenants.
I think in other words, this is going to be the primary entrance, is what
Yeah,
you're
I mean, I
saying
think
to us.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess that is another question. Were you asking, should it actually be sold? Should a piece of property just be sold to him?
Yeah, I mean, that's basically
Versus an
another
easement.
way, another right way, just cut off 5 feet and be done with it.
May I ask a question? As the public park, how, I assume that there's accessibility from the public to this park? Maybe not an hour perspective, but I can take my kids there at any point in time. I don't know if that's something to consider. There already is some sort of potential liability as a publicly accessible park. I don't have any reason to not name the town on any insurance policies, but I wasn't sure how that functioned in terms of a publicly accessible space.
Well, it'd be a non-exclusive. No, I mean, you're exactly right. The town has a policy right now, but in that the town would be granting you an easement across their property. Then if that was my property, I'd say, yeah, I may not have a problem with it, but, want to be covered as an additional insured under a liability policy. But that's a matter for the town there. I don't want to, that's outside the scope of this board. Whether or not did an easement or whether or not actually broke something off and then just said, willing to sell it to you, and it amounts to the same thing because Diana's already alluded to the fact that this easement in theory is going to be in perpetuity. So, as long as the use of that building is as it is, then that easement's going to be in place. Same thing at the Summers building.
Any additional questions for Mr. Lindsay? Any additional comments? Is there a motion?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
As far as the doors, I think it is important that the doors be historically correct. That was one of the issues we had with a prior owner in that this was not, so to speak, in the OH district, but it's in the overlay. And this is a contributing building to the neighborhood, so to speak, to the town. So whatever the style of the doors are relative to ADA compliance, would like those to be as historically correct. Yeah, yeah. I mean, as far as being contributing, would be the only comment that I would make.
And if this were to move forward, these are the 2 physical doors that sit within that building. Happy to have anybody come take a look at it.
Can you put panic bars and things on those? Okay.
Any additional questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I don't know how to word it.
So I'll tell you what you all have brought up, and let's see if you can get there. So you're requesting that the doors on the alley must remain and not be closed. You're requesting that the door needs to swing the opposite direction as identified on the drawings. You indicated that it should be a 5-foot easement that he is requesting, or purchase of a 5-foot piece of property, and we can figure out at town council. You would like historically accurate doors, presumably the ones he's presented here, as long as they're ADA compliant. And then there was also a mention of ensuring that there is a door between the front tenant and the rear tenant interior, even though we know that won't be specifically used.
Is that suitable?
And that the
Can you write it?
easement would probably have to be bigger than 4 feet.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't specify a number, but I know it's gotta be at least 5.
Okay.
Just knowing ADA.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we get 60 inches for at least the turnaround, but I'm
Yeah.
not sure about a coming and going path. I can't speak.
It'd be 60 right at the
Right at the
doors
door.
too.
It potentially could be a little smaller.
Right,
You need,
Off of 5 foot.
from the door jamb, you'll need it a minimum of 18 inches to the edge of the concrete.
It-
And then you'll have to have 60 inches clear, not including the swing, that gravel.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's probably cleaner just to say it's a 5-foot easement or 6 foot.
But actually,
4 foot,
the
whatever it
actual
is.
sidewalk coming towards the front only needs to be, well, it doesn't need to be 5 feet.
48. I mean, whatever it needs to.
But I would just say 5 feet and,
Yeah, just say comply with ADA.
yeah.
Well, one thing in that discussion is if the town does an easement involved in that, is that they can't shut off the entrance from Main Street to where the door is. In other words, you're talking about getting a
That's the other.
wheelchair in and out, but what you can't have is all of a sudden have say, a small pad of that size, and then the town decide to do something else with where you would come and go.
No, it has to be unencumbered.
Yeah, so that would have to be part of the easement.
But the nice part is in the space that we're talking about and where it's being presented, and if the town's gonna do something, then it can all, I mean, presumably, everybody's gonna work together to,
Yeah.
and that can be another entrance to something per se. I mean, I don't see it being, in the space that we're talking about it now, the town could say, hey, we'd like to have a sidewalk on that to separate
Right.
the two and another access to it. So I think in terms of feasibility, I think it adds to another layer of redoing that and making it more of a useful space anyway.
The sidewalk, another aspect, if you'll go back to the park. The sidewalk, obviously, I mean, that's a concrete pad, but if you look at the sidewalk that goes into the park, that's brick, isn't it?
Correct.
Mhm.
Okay, so back to your point.
Yeah, so if you're making it,
Another brick, it's improving
That's
the
correct.
aesthetics and everything. of
and
what's
it's
there.
very unlikely the town's gonna go all the way to the edge of that building anyway.
No, but you could break off and go back
Right.
into the park or something
Correct.
of that nature.
Right.
So, I mean, I agree.
In the space that we're talking about it now, it seems as though if this is another driver to redo that area to make it at least to that point of both, improving both sides of it.
If you give us a little while, we'll design everything.
Please. You might be cheaper than London. I'm sure he's listening in.
Okay,
Some like
Ba-
bid sheet.
based on what Miana said, does somebody want to put that in the form of a motion? I mean, do you have that so that it
She
could be?
says she has it, so I recommend what she wrote.
I would like to add, if I may, that if the town does, obviously our approval is subject to whatever the town council specifies, but if the town council does agree to this, then work together to where it's brick, something of that nature aesthetically, going back.
Do you
to the
want
store.
to add that to your motion, that he's required to put brick in?
That's gonna add considerable expense because all that concrete will have to be taken out.
I don't think that's incumbent upon the applicant.
Right.
I mean, I think,
Just that the town then work together with the applicant
Okay.
to try to make it complementary to what's already there.
Okay. And I think we would. We're actually looking at the 2 additional alleys along Main Street as well for creating pedestrian paths with like the lights and all of that. So this is part of that larger idea as well.
I'll second. Okay, I'm sorry.
okay. Any additional discussion? If not, would you call the roll?
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Aye. Thank you. Okay, next order of business, certificate of appropriateness, Abingdon Development, 174 East Main Street, Abingdon, Virginia. Owner certificate of appropriateness for allowance of an unapproved wooden deck stage located at 238 West Main Street, parentheses, partial 012-1-127, in parentheses. And I think we discussed this at least partially at the last meeting on the 10th.
Correct. So, as you mentioned, was an unapproved wooden deck. One of the things that we had discussed at the previous meeting was whether or not this was, basically approved with the original drawings, because as we all know, this building has gone through a number of iterations in front of you all. We determined that, one, this had never come before us for approval, to this body, and that, it was not inconsequential, so it is an actual additional feature. I would say that, this parking lot has been closed for a while, and so if you're asking how did this get put up, I think we saw it maybe within a day of it going up, and that's why we brought it to you at the last meeting, because we wanted to see whether or not that, we thought it was part of the original. And so what you have before you is a, unapproved wooden deck. It was August 28th of 2023 at the Planning Commission's regular meeting that the pergola, a wooden pergola and deck, was what was approved. So I don't think we have the original drawings in here to see, but this pergola and then this whole area, this deck on the far end was what was actually approved, not this basically second deck. So this property is for Delta Blues Barbecue and Tumbling Creek Cider, which you can see here, the name is on the upper, what I'd call like a I can't say that word, level. It's on a sort of a half level, if that makes sense. And so you'll have Delta Blues down here below, and then you'll have Tumbling Creek Cider in this half area. The railing on the stage is 3 feet 6 inches. The space from the top of the decking to the bottom of the rail is 4.25 inches. The railing is dark brown and matches the area, and the actual structure is 20 feet by 12 feet. The proposal is to allow for music to be on this, and I think a couple of the questions that the applicant might be able to fill us in is whether or not the music would be facing towards the doorway or facing towards the parking lot. Because that parking lot's been closed for some time, we've been a little unsure if they intend to utilize the parking lot, close it, use it for concerts and that type of thing, or if this is meant more for facing music towards the interior of the structure. So with that, yes, this is already constructed. However, you all are here to make a discussion on the certificate of appropriateness.
I brought this up before the meeting, but last time we saw this, there was a stop work order, right?
I do not know if there was a stop work order.
I'm pretty sure there was.
I'm pretty sure there was, we did a stop work order.
Do you want to can you come up to the microphone?
And
Sorry.
then the railing appeared between then and now, which means they built it during a stop work order, which seems not right.
Yeah,
I could be
I
wrong.
think we did issue a stop work order. Unfortunately, Gabe and I were out of town at that point, so when we did get back, it did get completed at that time, so we couldn't stop it.
So you
at
are
that time.
correct.
Yeah, so.
Has that been communicated?
So
I
we
mean,
have,
as far as, it's one thing issuing the stop work order, delivering it. Had
Yeah.
that been communicated to Wahlberg?
Yeah, I am not entirely positive that a stop work order was actually issued.
I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there was a letter in the packet, and because that's why I suggested the temporary
Use.
railings.
Right.
Because
railings
I
went
was
up,
like, there's no way
yeah.
they'll get it in by 4th of July if they
Yeah,
honor the stop
the
work
railings
order.
went up basically the day after we had this meeting.
Yeah, so.
Yep. So the
That's not
applicant
good.
is here if you'd like to talk to them about that.
Well, one of the things we talked about when we discussed signage was the Tumbling Creek lettering was gonna go on top of the roof so it could be seen from Cummings Street, which I didn't like,
And they've tucked it underneath,
but they
correct?
tucked it underneath.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was part of the discussion, because what you had was two signs that were in totally different areas, and aesthetically, so the signage was changed.
So I like it better the way it is,
Mhm.
but it kinda makes me feel like, what are we voting on? It doesn't matter.
I mean, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than it is permission.
And the reason I bring that up is because now, I mean, we had a bandstand with no railing, and now we have railing. But what about lighting? I mean, are we gonna be dealing with lighting in another meeting, or?
You could ask the applicant that.
Okay.
There is no lighting proposed with this, so if they do want to have lighting, then yes, they would have to come to another meeting. I'm trying to remember when we did actual signage for that. But maybe you can bring the applicant up and I can see if I can find the signage.
If you,
Hello, I'm Tim Hoke. I live at 243 King Street Southwest here in Abington, and I'm a project manager with Walker Construction. Nathan was not able to attend. He was detained out of town, so I am standing in his place.
Look at you. No, I mean, it's, part of the frustration is this seems to be a recurring theme. You know, to where all of a sudden matters come back before the board that were not approved in plans, anything of this nature, and you take this stage. One of the attributes of Delta Blues is and always has been music. So this was undoubtedly planned from day one as part of, probably as part of their lease. But, you know, it's never been presented on any set of plans that this board has seen.
My understanding on that question is that there's been conversation back and forth about whether it's indoors, outdoors, both. It's kind of gone back and forth quite a bit, and they actually have.
Between you all and the tenant.
Yes. Yeah,
Not
so it's not
between.
been set. It's not been set.
Well, it's
on
set
plans.
now.
We have the, we have a structure there now, so I think they finally nailed things down with the tenant and moved on forward, so, obviously we will, abide by the town. on
Well,
this.
one thing I think, based on what Michael said and what you've just said, question about which way the music goes and whether or not there are gonna be any additional, improvements for lighting or whatever. I mean, we could specify that, but one of the concerns I have, and it goes back to some of the discussions we had, particularly with the building beside Rain, is when you have somebody who's a representative but not an owner, I'm not sure if this is gonna be the kind of discussion that we ought to have, because as a project manager, I don't think you can say to us that there's not gonna be additional lighting or that you know which way the music's gonna go. And if those are questions that you cannot answer, and I don't expect you to, then I think what we may wanna do is to say, look, we're gonna table this and we want the owner present at the meeting to answer those questions. Because, again, going back to Jeff's point, you know, all this was done without any approval, which gives me, you know, I'd hate to come back and say, oh, well, there's lighting now installed and we didn't ask for it, so is it okay? And I think that's a question for the owner, not for the contractor. That's just my position.
So the minutes we approved tonight from last time say that the town's not gonna let them continue installing the railing until they get it approved. But it doesn't say about stop work order.
Okay. And I don't know, I would have to talk to Rick about that, I'm not entirely sure.
Well, I guess to Mr. Schuman's point is, you know, Wahlberg all along has been making the calls on this building, to the best of my knowledge, as far as submitting the plans. Now, who is the owner of the building?
It's Abington Development. It's Doug Ellington and
Ellington,
or whatever business entity he's in partnership.
developed for that.
there's stop work order problems on other projects with the same group too, so I'm not.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you look at the way things are wired, all of the wiring, it appears the music's gonna be facing back towards the door of the restaurant.
Which means that lighting, if it's facing the band, is going to be in your face if you're driving down, if you're coming off of Cummins.
I'm not aware of any plans for lighting, that's, would be speculation on my part, so.
Yeah.
But, you know.
Yeah, I don't either.
But I think the question is, there may not be any plans, but there wasn't any plan for a stage either.
Yes.
So,
Well, I think the best we do is table it and tell Howard to come in here and tell us what's going on.
You have options. You literally can make them remove it, completely. I mean, this was built without approval. You can table it and have, an additional review of the project with things like lighting and the other additional things that you'd like, or you can recommend approval. So you do have all the options that you would like to.
This board has always been a proponent of business and things of this nature. We just don't like being taken advantage of, and this is a recurring theme. You know, more than willing to work with the developer, the owner, and what have you, but you need to come, you need to be fully transparent as to, you know, what it's gonna, what you're requesting. Just like I said, Delta Blues is known for music. All right, this has always been planned. It's never been on any plans. I don't understand that. So I'm in favor of tabling it until somebody else can come and then address the board and tell us, here's the comprehensive plan for what we're trying to accomplish here. You know, as far as the stage, the direction, the music, the lighting, if any. Yeah, and I'm not advocating that, you know, this looks poorly or anything of this nature. It doesn't. You know, it's just the fact that we've never seen anything on it.
well, and again, I think you're representing somebody who's doing the building, you're not the owner, so I don't think you can agree to any of the terms, or you can say what the owner intends. I think that would be unfair of us to require you to do that, and I think that's why the owner needs to be here, so I agree we should probably table it. Do we need to have a motion for that?
You would need to have a motion. I don't know that you wanna make it the owner though, because you have been working with Nate as a project manager the entire time. So, I mean, the owner, you know, the owner of the building may not be the actual representative. who would-
Just the authorized
responsible
representative.
party or something.
Yeah, responsible party, sure.
Or something.
Well, I would
Unless
say,
you can
I
make
would say the
decisions.
responsible party, not the knowledgeable party.
Tim's not responsible for it.
Right, if you can make decisions, that's very different. If you're saying that you can't make decisions if they made any recommendations, then yes, we need to definitely be talking to the person who could.
Yeah, so my understanding was I would represent Nathan in terms of this application for forgiveness.
So no. Yeah, no, and,
I mean,
no,
you tell me.
I'm not giving you a hard time or anything of that nature, but, just need to have the authorized representative. You
Well, I
know,
would
that-
say the responsible party, I think
That's fine.
I think that's, you know, again, that it's somebody, what I don't want is, again, going back to what we talked about, all of a sudden we approve this and then somebody comes in and says, that we find that, yeah, there's lighting being put up or something like that. If, you know, that's, and I wouldn't feel that way necessarily, except that this got built without any approval.
We've gone back and forth on this building relative to the signage, to the lighting and everything. We've always been very, very complimentary and cooperative.
And I think I have no problem with the stage. I just want to make sure that we know exactly what's going to be done and if this is the final plan or if there are any additions.
Was there any building permit for this?
I don't know.
We have an active permit on the project.
That includes this.
Not for that. Not for the stage, that's,
I think it's the whole reason we're here, right?
Caleb, can you clarify that?
Yeah, usually how it goes is they get approved for the COA and then they apply for the building permit afterwards. So yes, no building permit has been
Yeah,
applied for
okay,
this.
okay.
Okay, is there a motion?
I make a motion, we table this matter until the responsible party can come before the board.
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? If not, would you call the roll?
Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Mr. Weaver?
Aye.
Mr. Pennington?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
And Mr. Schuman?
Thank you all.
Thank you, Tim.
All right, the next is old business matters not on the agenda. One thing that again, going back to stuff without an approval, there's the business there on Pecan Street where the Blue Hills Market is. They have window signage that takes up the whole window.
Yes, I guess I'll just go ahead and put this on the record. So, yes, that went up again. I mean, a lot of this stuff goes up really quickly. Caleb and Gabe drive the OH district and the historic, or the entrance corridor, what would you say, twice a month, once a month, once a week?
Trying to do once a week now.
Once a week, so they're driving the entire area once a week.
Lucky you.
Yeah. We also, Jamie did a really awesome postcard that hopefully you all got in the mail, but we sent a postcard to every address in Abingdon, and we're finalizing that. We've kind of sent it out in waves because it's a lot of addresses to label. So we've sent out postcards to every address to say, you know, building permits are required within the town of Abingdon. These things go up really quickly. So this signage on Pecan went up instantly the very next, as soon as we saw it. And not only that, but we had a business concierge meeting with them, or they turned in a property verification form. We had told them about building, or the permits for signage. We'd gone through that entire process. The part that is probably the part that I maybe shouldn't say on the record, but they said, we're from Johnson City. And they insinuated that we didn't understand how signage rules work. So, needless to say, we went ahead and looked up Johnson City's signage rules. And they also have a percentage of window signage that is allowed or disallowed, if you want to look at the inverse, half full or half empty.
Why do you want to poke the bear?
And so,
I wouldn't
yes.
look it up. I would
And
just
so
say,
we said
open
then,
business there.
yeah, so then we said, okay, I mean, the way that our signage code reads, they've got 2 street frontages. So they could have signage on both of those street frontages. They could have a freestanding sign. They could have, you know, percentage of the window. Like, there's many, many different types of signs they could have. So we provided them all of that information. And they are, I mean, they have within, you know, we're in the whole code compliance temporary sign permit stage with them. So they have till, I think, the 19th to have that sign gone, the 19th of July. So, of course, they cried foul on the amount of money that they had to spend, but, you know, that we have a very specific look and feel to our community, and that does not match, and that is why, after we had all those troubles with the vape shop, while you all recommended approval for a percentage of window signage, because we'd had grofers who put window signage, you know, we just started having window signage everywhere because we said, we allow window signage with no restrictions. So it was great to have that code, because otherwise that is what you would get.
Well, and
so-
you know, again, I'm sorry if it cost them money.
Right.
But I go back to the point that Jeff made is, you know, if all we're doing is granting permission after they've done something they're not supposed to.
Well, I mean, it's the same aspects that we used to deal with Historic Preservation Review Board. People come in and say, we didn't know. Well, the town has been very forthright, and staff is to be commended on reaching out to all of the town residents saying, look, here are the requirements. These requirements are applied on a uniform basis. Whenever you're looking at property, this is what it's subject to and what you have to comply with. It's not that, you know, all of a sudden this was passed and here you go. No. So I don't, it sounds bad, but, you know, this is for the benefit of the town. And it's applied
Well,
equally to everybody.
again, we're not looking at something that happened a long time ago, because you're gonna find stuff in the historic district that got done years ago. Whatever happened, but what you're looking at is, this happened after we approved those regulations. And, you know, I think what we did with Delta Blues again, you know, I just think that at times, you know, you're gonna have to hold the line.
The other thing at this building, which we all have discussed multiple times, but we do have Platter and Pour who is interested in additional signage. And so I think one of the struggles, which we all said at the beginning of that, was when they put together a master sign plan, but didn't actually, you know, the uses may come and go in that building. So, you know, there may be some additional discussion about when those actually come to us. Because it's great if you wanna do a master sign plan, if you want a specific look and feel, but if every single tenant then comes in to ask for their own signage, then really honestly, is that valuable? Because the idea with that master sign plan is that then you have a uniform look to all your signs. And so we have told Platter and Pour that they could come in and make a request to you all. However, we said, you know, there is a master sign plan and this is what was approved with it. So, so yes, I mean, I wanna just be clear, like, we're not doing anything to try to hinder business, but it does need to have a specific process and a specific look and feel in the entrance corridor. Otherwise, why would you have an entrance corridor?
Yeah, well, at one point, and I don't know when it changed, but at one point, if the signage met the criteria, it didn't come before the commission, staff could handle it.
Yeah, and I asked that question the last time. I'm not sure if you were here at that meeting, but I did ask that question when we were discussing it, and everyone here said that they still wanted to approve the sign, so
And that's, I'm just making the point that at
Yes.
one point,
Yes.
that those signs did not come to
Right.
the commission, they were basically approved by staff.
Correct, yes.
All right,
But yeah, this, I mean, you know, the other thing too, I'm just showing this sketch just for discussion purposes, but you know, when you're in this sort of design phase and you all are approving, you know, this, you know, the question is, should you get a more detailed plan before you recommend approval? You know, in the HBRB, we're very, very specific, in the entrance corridor, like this is the drawing that got approved with the pergola. You know, they said pergola and steps and all of that, and I would say this isn't exactly what is there right now.
No, but as modifications are made, again,
Mhm.
the board has been very accommodating.
Mhm.
Come to us.
Correct.
And then show us what those modifications are. And then the board has always worked with the applicants to promote business, not hinder it. But you're not only coming before the board for a COA, you're bypassing the building permit process altogether.
Correct.
And then just doing what you want.
well, and all due respect to Wahlberg Construction, they knew better. You know it and I know it. I mean, they've done enough business in the town to know that.
This is a better drawing than the door drawing with the highlighter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, maybe we need to move on.
That was pretty low effort, I have to say.
I was gonna make a politically incorrect statement.
We're still on the we're still on the record,
Oh.
everybody.
Close.
Oh.
Is there anything we need to discuss on these,
Waivers?
waivers?
I don't think so. Mainly they were just repainting, like for like, so,
Well, I realize that thousands of lives don't depend on this, but for the one that Matt made,
mhm.
the correct acronym is EPDM, not MD.
Gotcha, okay.
EPDM.
Okay.
Any additional discussion or business come before the commission? Is there a motion that we adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.
Cannot believe it.